Lisboa. Hello, everyone. Before starting, I would like to first extend my gratitude to Mary for the invitation and to the Future Days team for all the vital work in organizing this quite lovely and forward-looking event here in the southern cone of Europe. My name is Kira Xonorika. I'm an artist, an author, and a futurist, and I'm Guaraní, which are peoples who have historically lived in the southern cone of South America, in the territories commonly known today as Paraguay, Argentina, Uruguay, Brazil, and Bolivia. I'm currently based in Tovangar, which you might know by its colonial name as Los Angeles in California. I work across different media, AI, film, robotics, sculpture, performance, and I'm particularly interested in the connections between technoscience, interspecies, and planetary intelligence, as well as world building and indigenous sovereignty. And I would like to invite you today at 7 p.m. We're going to be screening one of my films. It's titled Deep Time Dance. And today this talk is centered around explaining a little bit about my process and the research behind it. In 2021, I was commissioned to write a text for eFlex Journal by Mackenzie Work, which you might know as the author of the Hacker Manifesto, one of the very important books around media in the late 90s, I believe. Thank you for the nodding. It was correct. And so Postgentilist Fantasies, Temporalities about Latin American Trans Art was looking around the conditions for defuturing, not refuture, but the opposite, defuture. The conditions in which death worlds, more commonly known in the theoretical fields as necropolitics, emerge, and the conditions in which scarcity is made. And in this text, something that I really wanted to explore was monsters. Monsters as antagonistic opposites of humanity, monsters as a subjective condition, you know? But also how, particularly in the South American context, anti-gender policies, we were starting to ban the word gender from books. That really happened in Paraguay in 2017. It is now, kind of almost policy in the US. And I was interested in monstrosity as this opposite of humanity, as, was a lot in the discourse, but also the other is often, in the realm of this triangulation between medical pathologization, religious demonization, and judicial restriction. And so this is how the research starts in death worlds, but not where it ends. I'm moving towards life worlds. And then I found this image. This is the monster of Ravenna. Can you see it? In ancient medieval texts, and this monster is particularly interesting because it synthesizes so many ideas about otherness. How in the Renaissance, this mythological images were often, recognized as science in taxonomical texts, but also really sprayed as misinformation currencies in Europe, and this meant to represent, different forms of moral deviancy, being homosexuality, intersexuality, transsexuality, and disability, which was also in the mix. And my work is interested in reimagining that which is perceived as more than human. Because I believe that there is beauty in those bodies that are expansive, and I believe that those expansive bodies, which are often connected to the animal world, have so much, we can learn so much about them. And in this underwater series, I was exploring, I was looking a lot into the bodies of the water bodies, and particularly octopi. And octopi to me are so interesting as a different form of intelligence, because they have many brains, but they think with their tentacles. So imagine these are my tentacles now. So if I were to do this, then you would see how my tentacles would become transparent, how they would adopt the color of the LED lights, and how they would become pink. So that's what's very interesting to me about octopi, is how they learn with their bodies, essentially, kind of demystifying that Cartesian division of the mind, of the what happens here and what happens here, the body versus the head. And my work is also very concerned with language, because generative AI today relies heavily on language, but it relies on majoritized languages. You know how to prompt in AI properly? You need to prompt in English, and then maybe the next language that has more sufficient data to prompt something with crisp detail is perhaps Spanish, and then French, and then maybe Portuguese, but no indigenous languages. And language is important to me as someone who writes, but also because language, words are the houses which we build, the houses in which we live. Words are also forms of knowledge, as language and different knowledge systems emerge from different languages, but also spells, more traditionally in different opaque practices, otherwise known as magic. And to me, it's very interesting how the language of the Western world often tries to define different binaries between that which is human and that which is not human. And you know, the human and the not human, like I said, the savage and the civilized, the natural and the artificial, aliens versus angels, and so on. And my work is interested in reimagining and reorienting those imaginaries, in reorienting our direction and how we can constellate beauty beyond that. But also interested in world building, because I believe that any world project, as Jota Mombasa, a very important Brazilian thinker, said, formally articulating a colonial situation is subject to the same destiny as the pre-colonial worlds. And so we need to think our reorientation. And I'm particularly concerned with the way that a lot of people working with AI use it to prompt dystopia. Because there have been traditionally, according to science fiction, two orientations, right? Which are also binaries. Utopia, dystopia, techno-optimism, techno-doomerism. I believe Monica Bilskite, which was here a year ago, a very important protopian futurist, she talks about how the future is this place that which we have to build together. We'll have to co-create more interconnectivity, and that is not going to be black or white. And so I look at ancestral futures, and I look at that potential for re-indigenization. And Nema Gitera discusses how there are two conditions for, the rebuilding of the world. According to this worldview, for decolonization, there needs to be a decomposition process of these systems. But as we know from the land and the cycles of the land, we can't just exist in decomposition. There needs to be a process of regeneration and reblooming. So after decomposition comes re-indigenization and the prioritization of these systems of knowledge, which have been intelligence of the land for so long before they were devastated, dispossessed, deterritorialized, precarized, and so on. This was one of the first pieces I created with AI, and it was a very funny story. I was in LA, and it was so hot outside. I couldn't go on a hike. I really wanted to go on a hike. And then I was like, okay, let's try this AI generative thing and see what happens. And that process was very playful. It was very centered around language, but I was also, kind of exploring terms, and I would see that when I prompted the word indigenous, like certain things, very stereotypical, would come out, like certain references to North Native American cultures, the headdresses, and like certain phenotypes that are very connected to those ways of representation, but also most importantly, anthropological imagery. A lot of the photographies taken in the colonial expeditions across the Americas, all lumped into certain images. And working with those images was a very interesting tension, because this is what comes up in the corporate generators. And the question is always the database, right? And who are the people who code these databases? What are the words that they're prompting so that we can access this imagery now? But my approach has always been futuristic. My approach has always been, let's not go back to the past and repeat those patterns, but create something centered around beauty and regalia and expansiveness and presence, most importantly, presence. Indigenous ways of thinking around AI have been very important in my practice. Archipelagoist thinks about stones as ancestors, as they have been on Earth for so long. They are so ancient. But if we think about the mineral computation of AI in our technological devices, the quartz and the copper, everything is really made of a certain form of materiality. AI is not this holographic entity that we think about. It has a very material reality, and it is connected to complex processes of extraction happening in the global south, of course. But also, I think we need to move beyond the critique of post-industrialism and recognize that sever our connection to land and sever our connection to AI in this regard is also damaging the future as AI emerges as this new form of planetary intelligence in which Earth is able to reproduce, to produce maybe, for better wording, imaginaries. Symbiotic imaginaries. Imaginaries in which we are interconnected, in which we, in a space in which we coexist, and thinking of ourselves as gardens. I'm a garden, you are a garden. There are millions of cells right now inhabiting in your body, cells that have the memory of the wars that your ancestors have lived through, but also cells that have the memory of creation that was intergenerationally given to you. And I would like to talk a little bit about my perspectives on revitalization and certain processes that are connected to this way of viewing and perceiving the world. Beyond my artistic practice, I'm also, and as many artists probably here, wearing many hats. In 2024, I had the opportunity to direct a residency, the Future Memory Lab, which is the first artistic residency connecting AI to ancestral material cultures happening in South America. I was in partnership with the Swiss Arts Council, and we were thinking a lot about two things that are connected to indigenous material cultures of Paraguay, ceramics and Yanduti textiles, and why are these important? You know how there's this thing going around, oh, AI is going to take artists' jobs, and you know, that's a very lazy and I think a very small way of analyzing certain things. So what we wanted to do with AI is connect it to the ancestral, the future with the ancestral, if you will. Ceramics have always been very important for Guaraní cultures. They have matrilineally been passed down across generations. They have been used for funerary purposes in the past. Today, they're mostly decorative, and you know, that's just the way in which art kind of transitions its models across time, in which modernity kind of forces us to become something else. And there's Yanduti textiles. And textiles are very interesting because, you know, when early colonization happened in the Americas, there was this presumption that these peoples had no written languages. We know now from Kipu and from different forms of textiles that text is actually encoded in the textiles, because textile precedes text. Do you see the connection? And so this is saying many things. This is obviously encoding transcultural imagination, and that's what we also wanted to expand. But also because Yanduti has this history of being, women and feminized people have always used it to kind of generate financial autonomy from men. So that's also an important dimension to think about gender. But also, I think that speculatively we can go beyond. And these are some fine pictures at the Museo del Barro. One of the most important museums holding collections of ceramics and textiles in South America, but this was done in partnership with the Miglorisi Foundation. And to start wrapping up, I want to talk a little bit more about two more embodied forms of my work. This piece is titled Agent, and what you're seeing right now, it's a robot dog. Because I like to go real ancient, but I like to go real high-tech too. And robot dogs, okay, so this was in LA, and the gallery owner is John Thread, who is one of the hackers who inspired the film Hackers, the 1995 film, which starred Angelina Jolie on her first feature role. And John had this robot, and the first time I saw the robot walking around and then kind of jumping, I was like, the fuck? Sorry. And it made me think a lot about my connections with, going back to what I was talking earlier, how the other is kind of embedded always in our interactions and our relations, and how this robot dog became the other, and how I feared this robot dog because of the imaginaries that we associate with it. You know, we've seen the images on Instagram and how it's connected to global conflicts today, and how AI can be used for death. But as much as AI can be used for death, I would like to also think that it can be used for play. And so, we made this ceramic 3D printed sculpture on top of it. And I work with an indigenous artist working with cultural hairstyles to create a really cool updo. It was so pretty. More details on Instagram, by the way, instagram.com/Xonorika if you want to follow me, just saying. And then we did a performance with this robot dog. And first, we started on the floor, kind of like bugs, like facing at each other, and then kind of making this dance of territoriality, but also expanding from it, and it became a choreographed dance. And on the backdrop, you see one of the texts that I've written. It was very interesting, and what I could really feel with the audience was also this thing of fear and fascination, because those are like the gut feelings of like, I'm encountering this other figure. What is this other figure? And it's very interesting to witness how also animals react to robot dogs, because it's 50-50. On the one hand, you have, these have been exposed to like jaguars and dogs and different forms of animals, and like 50% would be like, oh my God, I'm shit scared. Get me the hell out of here. And the other 50% is kind of like, I don't know what you are, but I'm going to play with you. So thinking in ways of moving beyond the tendencies of the techno-capital of centering domination in AI and robotics, which is very Le Guin, by the way, if you know the reference. And we'll end here. Oh, this is a GIF, but it's not moving. Okay. My latest film is titled Deep Time Dance. And it's a film about movement. It's a film about joy. It's a film about kaleidoscopic color, beauty, life emergence, life worlds centered. Because AI is being used a lot to kind of revive things, and kind of Hollywood right now has this tendency of just doing remakes of 30, 50-year-old films. And I think the logic of AI kind of taps into that as well. But here I research into the origin story of the Guaraní. And it's a very beautiful story of a hummingbird which emerges from the water. And this hummingbird is like a bluish, green color, which the Guarani word for that is hovu. And hovu, and the word means water. So water is also in the color. And that's language, that'll be a whole different topic, but just for info. That'll be a whole different conversation, I mean. And this film is looking at that origin story, but also thinking of two-spirit futures. Two-spirit is a term that was coined in North America in an indigenous convention in the 90s to describe the existence of gender expansive peoples coming from indigenous populations. I come from South America, but I was given that title or that wording by an elder, so I'm not complaining. And it is based on the story of the Tupatenonde, which is the Mainumbu, which is the hummingbird. And so this is a film that is thinking about survivance. So early in the talk, I was talking about death worlds. Here I'm really centering life worlds. What are the ideal conditions for life to emerge, for life to exist, for life to thrive, for the world to be beautiful? This is a geocinematic piece. It's an immersive film. So it has mostly little to no dialogue, but it's really colorful. It has also a very fun soundtrack in collaboration with a Mexican artist, Mexican musician, Nancy Samara. So I would like to invite you to see it. This piece was commissioned by the Roy and Edna Disney CalArts the Downtown Center for the Arts, which is the art gallery of the Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles. It was commissioned for the Getty PST event, which is a LA quinquennial and this last year was centered around art and science. So I would like to invite you to see the film, to experience the film, and maybe to dance with the film today at 7 p.m. Where, Mary? Okay, Mary said yes. I said the time correct. So yeah, I would like to invite you to see that film, and thank you so much. Welcome to the future.